just beat Halo Campaign Evolved. What do I think? To me, it feels like there were two teams working on this game. There was one team that were locked in and knew exactly what to do, and then the other team that never heard of Halo before. Now, I don't know why this is the case, but that's how it feels to me. There are elements to this remake that are super fun, but then there's like elements to the design where it just drags it all down. It's like the people that worked on 343 Guilty Spark 100% knew exactly what to do. They had played the original, they clearly loved the original, and they nailed it out of the park. What a gorgeous atmosphere for like the swamp and even the interior stuff with the flood and all that. But like never is it carried over to the rest of the game. I think the Covenant stuff, it's fine. I prefer how it looks in the original, but like I'm not overly upset by it. Again, 2001 game, it's an open book exam. You shouldn't mess this stuff up. It just doesn't look as good to me. The Pillar of Autumn, I really liked how it looked in the first mission and in the Maw. I really liked the Warthog run. I thought that was really fun. I love the lighting there. When it comes to the actual gameplay, I think there's a lot of spots in the game that are really fun to play, really enjoyable. On Legendary, at least, they stray away from the formula that made Halo Combat Evolved such a fun experience on Legendary. And too often do they rely on just throwing more stuff at you and just like more annoying elements from Combat Evolved. I don't think Combat Evolved was a perfect game. I think it was a phenomenal game, don't get me wrong. But if this game had a multiplayer, bare bones progression system at least, on top of this campaign, I think the value proposition of $50 would be way more appealing to a lot of people. But it's just the campaign and 3 prequel missions that I like, but they're not like the best Halo missions of all time. They still have a lot of the fundamental gameplay issues that I think are plaguing Campaign Evolved overall. Namely, they need to learn to give you more cover. There's like so many sections, especially in the newly reworked sections and the prequel missions, where there's just not enough viable cover in my opinion, and they're trying to up the intensity and the pace of it. I don't think that's a good feel for this more traditional pace to Halo. I don't think it necessarily works that well. It really does feel as if in the last year of this game's development, they tried to go back and change quite a bit to be more in line with the original. And I appreciate those attempts, but it should have been like that to begin with, but it's not like enough to completely get over a lot of the non-faithful development that this game clearly had, mainly when it comes to the Forerunner stuff. The Forerunner stuff across the board never looks as good as it does in the original. There are elements that I think look pretty good, namely in 343 Guilty Spark and the library. But it doesn't have this level of immersion, in my opinion, that Combat Evolved had. There's like I don't want to use the word comfortable, but there's a weirdly immersive, engrossing element to the design of the Forerunner architecture and the interior environments in Combat Evolved that honestly, I don't think Halo ever nailed again outside of Combat Evolved. When it comes to the lighting, when it comes to the way things are designed, the way some of the interior lighting is, particularly in the library, where certain walls just look like star maps in a way. I think all of that stuff is just thrown out the window in favor of a far more generic alien architecture style, which I think like in a vacuum by itself looks good and impressive, but it doesn't look like Combat Evolved. And for a game like Combat Evolved, which was always more bare bones on its narrative, it focused far more on appealing to your senses visually and auditorially with the music and the sound effects and all that when it comes to exploring these environments and getting you hooked onto this game world that would then be fully fleshed out narratively wise when it comes to like Halo 2 and Halo 3. Those elements just aren't brought over to Campaign Evolved. So it's like in a vacuum, Campaign Evolved I think is a really fun time. But when I look at the value proposition behind this game, it is a $50 game with only a campaign and 3 new missions that is based on part of a 2001 game that largely does everything worse. Rarely does it do anything I'd argue that's better. I think the best argument would be 343 Guilty Spark and like the first third of 2 Betrayals, because the Sentinel Beam really tightens up some encounters that are really brutally difficult in the original. And I will say, I absolutely love how the snowy night feels and looks in 2 Betrayals when you first leave the control room. I wish it was a bit darker, but overall I still really like that vibe. And I feel a lot of their times, their attempts to make the missions feel less repetitive, which was a valid criticism in my opinion to Combat Evolved, Evolved. They try to change up quite a few of the environments and areas you go to, in areas like the library, Assault on the Control Room, 2 Betrayals, and they try to change it up just a bit. I don't think the work they put in sufficiently makes it feel less repetitive. It's more lateral move, in my opinion. And I feel that Legendary is way less engaging and fun in this game than it was in Combat Evolved. They have the tendency to throw way too many things that are just more intense and difficult at you, rather than things that are more engaging to fight. It's no longer necessarily a chess puzzle, it's more just like a check if you got a good checkpoint, if you have the exact right weapons. It's like that one room in the Maw where you have to get by 2 hunters, and then you get inside the room and it's like 3 or 4 grunts all with fuel rods. That doesn't feel good. It's difficult, sure. Is it doable? Absolutely. Is it fun, engaging, and rewarding? I would argue it's not. There are a couple of cutscenes in this game that I think I quite like, namely in Assault in the Control Room, the stuff with 343 Guilty Spark, not the mission, I mean the character, and even in the Maw. But there's a lot of cutscenes, predominantly in the first half, and also the Legendary exclusive ending, where the pacing just goes out the window. And even with the cutscenes that I like, it still has a pacing issue. With the voice direction, not the voice actors, the voice direction's god-awful across the board, predominantly speaking. Every now and then it's a fine line. But predominantly speaking, the voice direction is god-awful and way too drawn out. And in particular in the first half of the game, there's like these weird pauses in between lines of dialogue, and it feels like they're padding for time. On top of that, the actual cinematics in the game, with anything that involves action, are god-awful. Characters look absolutely stupid when they move. They move way too slowly, and it completely lacks intensity, which is a weird inversion to what they designed gameplay-wise, where they try to make these engagements way more intense by just throwing more difficult things and more enemies at you, but that doesn't translate to the cutscenes. They're very slow and drawn out, and it's like everyone's moving through molasses or something. It doesn't feel good to watch. It's annoying, it's drawn out, and it's worse than the 2001 game. I feel in a lot of ways when people have concerns about games and developers saying we're trying to modernize this game or make it appeal to a modern audience, this will be a great example to point to and say, this is why I view that to be a negative. That's a red flag to me, because every time they attempt to modernize this game, it's for the worse or it doesn't make the game actively better. Sure, you can argue that's subjective on a case-by-case basis. Sure, you can say that. But in my experience, rarely does this game ever do anything better than Combat Evolved. I think it's less memorable overall. I think there's weird music cues every now and then where they like use old music from Combat Evolved or the previous Halo games just in the weirdest spots. Like that one cutscene in Assault in the Control Room we had, and the final cutscene, it was just like wildly misplaced. I ran into a weird number of performance issues as well in the final couple of missions that I just did not have in the first like 2/3 of the game. That was really weird. I don't necessarily mind the move to Unreal Engine 5. Yes, there's a lot of performance issues that I just talked about, where I have a bunch of like brief stutters and the game just dips in performance. I don't mind the idea of them acid flipping a bunch of stuff for the future for Halo to speed up development and get more games out the door quickly. Because I would imagine you can borrow a lot of elements and assets from this game to just make Halo 2 and Halo 3, particularly Halo 2, because we even had in the mission, the library, just the elevator from Halo 2. You can just copy paste that into Halo 2. I don't mind development stuff like that. I don't like the assets they're going to reuse. I don't like the Forerunner architecture. I don't think it looks nearly as good or as appealing as the original. The Covenant stuff just looks like purple alien stuff. It doesn't look as cool to be in and navigate as in even in the original. It just looks worse across the board, barring UNSC specific stuff. They got the lighting so right when it comes to 343 Guilty Spark, and then in 2 Betrayals and Keys, they just dropped the ball. They picked it back up a bit when it comes to the Maw, but like in 2 missions, in my opinion, that are arguably 2 the most important missions to nail the lighting and atmosphere, they dropped the ball. Things are way too bright. You could argue 2 Betrayals is kind of fine, but like the library and Keys, just way too bright in my opinion. Even if the library in certain sections looks fine, it's just too bright across the board. When it comes to like, if somebody has never played Halo before, what should they play? Combat Evolved or Campaign Evolved? I don't see a compelling argument for Campaign Evolved in any way. The original Combat Evolved still holds up visually, sound design wise, gameplay wise. It's super fun. You can argue it feels better to play as well. And you can also tend to get it cheaper. When the Master Chief Collection goes on discount, it's significantly cheaper than this game. And I imagine this game at some point in the future will be on steep discounts. I imagine that's going to be the case. I think the weapon skins and having elements like remix mode and all the skulls and new terminals and stuff like that to collect, really cool additive elements that I'm glad they did for Campaign Evolved. I just wish a lot of the other changes they made, like the design of this Halo ring is butt ugly. I wish a lot of the other changes they made were as cool additions to the game or changes as things like remix mode or the skulls or the terminals and stuff like that. I think if we were going to do a Halo 2 remake, which they keep teasing in this game, I would want to see them go back to the drawing board for the Forerunner stuff. I would want them to speed up the pace of all the cutscenes. I think gameplay-wise, when it comes to shooting things, they're onto something really fun and engaging. When I'm firing a weapon in this game, it feels good ordinarily. I wish the shotgun had more range. I wish the plasma pistol actually felt good to use. But there's too many elements in this game where it feels like it was designed by people that didn't know Combat Evolved inside and out. You can argue that's outsourcing if you want to or not. There clearly was some outsourcing here, and sure, that could be at play. But the way we got to the endpoint doesn't matter. The endpoint, in my opinion, is not good enough. And it's not like, oh, it almost hit the mark. It wildly missed the mark. I think the sniper rifle feels worse as well. I like the beam rifle, funnily enough. Beam rifle feels fine. I don't know why we thought adding sniper jackals to this game would be a good idea. I mean, they didn't ruin anything in my opinion. They're fine. I feel like the rocket flood, fuel rod flood are a war crime. They overuse grunts with fuel rods, particularly the last couple of missions. There are just so many elements where this game definitely has replayability. But if I want to experience this story again, I feel like Combat Evolved would just be way better for that. It's better paced, it's better executed, it looks better, it plays better, it sounds better. Besides like the weird dialogue balancing issue that Master Chief Collection has. I think disappointing would be putting it mildly. And it's weird because most of my issues don't exist until the second half of the game. And like when it comes to the prequel missions as well, there's a really cool idea they had when it comes to Harmony and these genetic experiments being done to the races of the Covenant. They don't do anything with it. And I just don't care about the characters. I don't care about the story they tell in the prequel missions. I don't mind them mechanically. They could have been much better because the pacing's bad, cutscenes are bad, dialogue's bad, voice direction's terrible. The new characters suck in the prequel missions. None of them are compelling. I do not care about the ODST and Spartan rivalry when it comes to this game at all in any capacity. It's not engaging to listen to or interact with or engage with. I wish they focused way more on Harmony and the genetic experiments and how it could parallel even the Spartan program. They just like mentioned that for like 2 lines of dialogue and then moved on about a day. I don't know why they did that. I love the golden white aesthetic of the Covenant there though. That was great. But I think one of the biggest sins when it comes to Campaign Evolved is when you look at all the cut content that had existed for Combat Evolved back in the day, and they chose to barely bring any of that over. Where's the flamethrower? Why aren't we doing stuff like that? Really cool things that they wanted to bring into the game at some point in development, but they never got around to doing it. I had to cut it. Why not add the flamethrower to this game? That would have been cool. If we're going to have things like the SMG, why not have dual wielding? Why not? Do you want to save it for Halo 2? Because if you cut it from Halo 2, I'm going to argue to remove the license from like Halo Studios for Halo. I feel like dual wielding would have been such a cool addition to this game that they just didn't do. And when you add a weapon like the SMG, it just feels terrible. It feels like a worse assault rifle. And there's so many skulls that you can get that are really cool, but there's a good number of them that should have just been the default state, and the skull should have been to like enable some other feature. It's like sprint should have been removed. The assault rifle should have been just like the original one, but you can toggle it to be like a more modern Halo Infinite style assault rifle with a skull. Those things shouldn't have been the default. They should have been enabled with skulls, not the way they did it. Should have been the other way around. Because like losing functionality largely doesn't feel good. But like, hey, I can enable this skull and I can move faster around the game world. That could have been cool. Even if you just like had a skull that increased your base movement speed instead of giving you regular sprint, that could have been cool. But that's not the direction they took it. They played it weirdly safe, but also boring at the same time. And that's disappointing because there are a bunch of things you could have done with a Combat Evolved remake that we're probably never going to see again. Because this is the 3rd time we've had Combat Evolved. We had an Anniversary, the original, and now this. And it's upsetting and disappointing because of what could have been. Sure, they never promised these things, but they're layup wins. It feels worse in every way to Combat Evolved, the original. Though honestly, I do kind of like the fact that shield for the elites pops quicker and that you don't feel so beholden to plasma weapons. I don't personally mind that, but it makes the plasma weapons feel so bad to have in this game, and you want to get away from them as fast as humanly possible. I wish this game was better, and I feel like the biggest red flag is that this game apparently had development hell issues. That shouldn't have been the case. With halfway decent management, if you hired the right people, bringing back Combat Evolved should have been quick and easy, so long as you already had the assets ready to go for Unreal Engine 5. Onboarding people to Unreal Engine 5, sure, I can understand some issues with that. But like doing just the campaign for Combat Evolved again, that should not have been a difficult challenge. You have the script, you have the events, you have the maps, you have the weapons. Just add on to that with things that people have been asking for since 2001. That's all you had to do, and you didn't. So like in a vacuum, you can play this game and enjoy it. But it's all those X factors that surround it. The price, not having multiplayer. This being the only Halo new game that we've had since Halo Infinite came out. That was like 5 years ago. That doesn't feel good. Having the only new Halo experience that has come out that's not Halo Infinite since Halo Infinite be a worse version of Combat Evolved, it's a kick in the balls. Oh, what is this? Post-credit cutscene with Marvel? Hello, 343 Guilty Spark. Ah, the gas giant from Halo 2. Okay, I heard about that. Oh, he's gonna go meet the heretic leader. Okay, cool. So that's like 3 different hints towards a Halo 2 remake. I am not optimistic towards it. Halo 2, even more so than Combat Evolved to me, has so much potential for a remake with all the cut content. What they have demonstrated and showcased in Campaign Evolved does not give me a sense of optimism that they're going to go in the direction that I would want them to do for a Halo 2 remake, let alone a Halo 3 remake. I guess we'll see though. For me, I think Campaign Evolved is like a 4 or a 5 out of 10. I can't give it higher than that because Combat Evolved exists and is just significantly better. I think that matters because it's also cheaper than this. It's more fun, it's more memorable, it's more enjoyable, and just looks better.